Coming to you from the greatest city in the world, this is the #1 showbiz podcast. It's Talk for Two. Here's your host, Matt Bailey.
Miss D'Aguerrio, and thank you so much. Let's start, as usual, speaking of thank yous, by thanking Axtel Expressions, our season entertainment sponsor, and the Tangent Bound Network, our server hosts. Today is epic, let me tell you. Eugene Mirman joins us. Mirman is a comedian best known for voicing Gene Belcher on Bob's Burgers, and his recently released 9-volume, 7-LP comedy album, I'm Sorry, You're Welcome, is available on iTunes. And his new special, Vegan on His Way to the Complaint Store, is available for streaming on Netflix. And of course, a new season of Bob's Burgers can be seen now on Fox. Eugene talks his comedy beginnings, finding his audience, and finding a group of friends coming up in the business, many of whom he now works with on Bob's Burgers. Here now, with great insights from one of the most unique careers in entertainment, our interview with Eugene Mirman. What a day today. Eugene Mirman, welcome to Talk for Two. How are you doing today, sir?
Good. How are you?
I am great. This is going to be a lot of fun. Now, normally I like to begin at the beginning, and I like to ask how people got into comedy and got into their careers. But doing some reading in my research, your thesis in college was a 1-hour stand-up set. How did that happen?
Yes. I went to I went to Hampshire College, where you can design your own major. And so I designed the major of comedy. So I did a lot of classes in writing, performing, rise of mass culture, sociology, and wrote a humor column for a newspaper, for the college paper, and then did a radio show and all this sort of stuff, and put it all together into a general comedy concentration, and then wrote papers in physiology of laughter and all that kind of stuff. And then for my thesis, for my final project, I wrote, produced, and promoted a 1-hour stand-up act and ran a weekly show and stuff like that. It was actually really helpful in the end. In hindsight, it was an incredibly practical thing to do.
Yeah. Did you get to, were there other people with the same general interest, or were you the only one with that concentration?
I was the only one, but in Hampshire's case, everyone is the only one in their interest. I mean, I guess mine was more unusual in that it was so specific, but everybody, has a thing that they major in there and then design their own education with, collaborating with professors. But yeah, at the time, I think since then other people have maybe done it. But I also went to school in the early 90s or mid 90s, I guess, when, right after stand-up had been quite popular, and then around the time it had sort of crashed largely as a bit of an industry. Yeah. And then it sort of came back up.
Yeah,
more recently.
Now, I have a question. I saw that you were born in Russia, and you immigrated in around 4, I think it was. How old were you?
Yep, yeah, I was 4. Yeah.
Even though you were so young, does coming from that background of immigrating to the United States, does that influence your comedy at all? And if so, how?
I think it influenced sort of the way I grew up. I mean, I grew up sort of in America during the Cold War of sorts. I mean, I guess during the sort of the end of it, but really also at quite a heated moment of it. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think it definitely, it made me both kind of this weird outsider and then also sort of not completely. So it was, growing up, I think it definitely had an effect on me, but what it was, it'd be hard to say exactly.
Right. Let's go back to those years, and then in Boston, again, just reading another interview, you did this weekly comedy club, this show at a comedy club. Was it upstairs from what kind of restaurant was it? This is funny.
It was a Chinese restaurant, which I guess in the Boston area or Massachusetts, or I don't know, was not totally uncommon. But yeah, there's a comedy club that's really wonderful on the 3rd floor of a Chinese restaurant in Cambridge. And when I was there, sort of, I was starting out when Brendan Small and Jen Kirkman were there also, Patrick Borelli, who now works at Fallon. And at the time, Dr. Katz taped in the Boston area. So often, to headline Ron Lynch or Louis C.K. or Todd Barry, various people would drop by. So it was kind of an amazing place. But in general, even before that, there was a club called the Ding Ho. I mean, when I was a kid, I never went there, but where Stephen Wright got The Tonight Show and Bobcat Goldthwait and a lot of people sort of came out of that club. So there's this sort of funny tradition in the Boston area of Chinese restaurants that have famed comedy clubs.
And did it create a community of you comedians? Because Bobcat just directed your Netflix special.
He did, and I met him through Tony V, who was a comic in Boston. I mean, I met him a long time ago in Boston. After he had left, and I'd always loved his stand-up and his work. So it was very exciting, meeting him years ago, and then also over the years getting to know him, and then finally working with him.
Yeah. Now, when you talked about Boston, you talked about wanting to find the right audience and not really trying to do the appealing to all these tourists. What was the audience you were trying to find with your style, which is so unique and so different and so cool? What's the audience?
Oh, I wasn't. I was trying to find an audience. I hadn't determined who they would be. You know what I mean? Like, meaning, not to say that tourists can't enjoy it, but meaning I wanted to put on shows, and then whoever liked that sort of thing would hopefully find it and gravitate towards it and then tell more people. So, I didn't really know who or what it would be. I more just wanted to create my own thing rather than try to shoehorn what I was, comedy into sort of what it was at the time.
Well, you did because, and again, this is just something I noticed throughout your career. You've had this unique path that you're always playing some version of Eugene Mirman. It's never it's this interesting thing where it's so unique. Just like creating your own major, you've gotten to create your own career. It's crazy, isn't it? Just a lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's really incredible to have gotten to do it, but I think it's largely also because I found it easier to create my own stuff, try to fit into things, and then also as a result, I end up collaborating with people that I really like or know. And so, Bob's Burgers, Lauren Bouchard is someone who I met because he worked on Dr. Katz, and he used to come to that Chinese restaurant, and eventually him and Brenton Small made the TV show Home Movies together, and Brendan and I at the time lived together. So a lot of the stuff I've done is sort of, Flight of the Conchords was something that I had met, the Conchords through Dimitri Martin a long time ago in the U.S., and then also saw them in Edinburgh when I went to do the festival there, and then even at the Aspen Comedy Festival. So in general, a lot of my career is kind of collaborating with friends or people, putting me on shows that want to work with me.
Yeah, you're making me think as I sit here and I listen to you talk about all those different connections and how you got to kind of know them. I wonder if we're losing that in this age where everything is online. The ability to go and have a roommate who does what you do, or, the chances of that happening, or just meeting people.
I think the chances of that happening are actually quite high. I feel like I was 23 and I lived with another person who was 23 who wanted to do comedy, and also with a friend of mine from college who actually I worked on this album that I just made with. So the truth is, I feel like a lot of people live with, like people who play music often live with other friends that make music and they work together. And, I think if you go every day and do comedy, you become friends with the people that you meet who are sort of in the same place as you. And then eventually as you get better, you meet more and more people. But I mean, all the things I'm saying, like I met this person who that person, it's because for, 10 years, every day I'd go to do comedy. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like you'd meet those people too if you moved to New York City and went and every day did comedy.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And you mentioned that new album. Let's talk about that a little bit. That is a 9-volume, 7 LP project. What made you want to do the undertaking for the new project here? I have the name. I'm Sorry, You're Welcome. What?
I just wanted to make a different type of album. I wanted to make something that, had traditional stand-up and something you listen to, and then I wanted to sort of make this other thing that you could explore both alone and with friends. And I thought that it'd be really fun to, and then I also would get to got to collaborate with friends on it. So that was really fun for me because I worked so much alone that I had a great time making this thing with friends. And then it's also something that I thought would be, a thing that people could find the stuff that they connect with and then skip around and kind of listen to random stuff. And there's just a lot to explore, which I thought would be like a fun thing. It's something that I think I would have loved as a kid growing up.
Yeah, what was the impetus for it? Was there a moment where something said, okay, here's the idea, I'm going to work with my friends, I'm going to do this? Was there a moment in your head that you came up with the idea? What started you on the project?
I came up with it a long time ago as a joke where I had said that I was going to do a 100-disc album as people were releasing like box sets and stuff.
Yeah.
And then at some point it occurred to me that I obviously wasn't going to make a 100-disc thing, but I could actually quite reasonably make something that was like 8, 9, 10, 15 discs. And so once I realized that was pretty possible and I had a bunch of ideas, I sort of spoke to Sub Pop about it, and they were pretty interested. And then I found, talked to my friends about possibly collaborating because I wanted to have musical stuff. And then we decided that we'd just do the whole thing together.
Mm-hmm. That's really cool. And I listened to some of it, and I also watched last night because I'm just a huge fan of your work. I watched Vegan on his way to the Complaint Store, and it's fantastic. What did Netflix approach you, or who was the distributor that said we're going to do a stand-up special?
There was a company that I think New Wave that approached me about making a special, and then I guess they sold it to Netflix.
Mm-hmm. It's wonderful. And is there I love your style because it's you use props and you use these signs and you use language so wonderfully. But I wonder do you ever catch any flack among other comedians for using props? Because I love it, and it can sometimes be tougher to come up with ideas that use other visual elements than just doing strict stand-up.
I don't know. I mean, I think my thought always was, if it makes people laugh, you can do it. So, I mean, are there people who might give me flack? I guess. I don't know. But that's it's just sort of like asking a rock band if, you've added violin. Do people get mad that you've added a violin to rock and roll? I don't know. You would sort of be silly to be mad at a violin being added to rock and roll. So I feel like, I don't know. I mean, I developed sort of partially in college and then partially at a time when stand-up, when it wasn't even a particularly profitable thing to do. So I mostly would try different stuff on stage, and if it was funny, then that would be my act. And if it wasn't, I would try to change it. So I think that if it, all the stuff I do, and also largely it's more to show that it's something that's real. Like when I hold up signs and things, you often can't see the actual thing I've written. It's more to just go hey, here's the actual ad that I took out on Facebook. Here's the actual sign that I put in a bathroom or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So, or even, in terms of this album, one of the discs or one of the volumes is 45 minutes of crying. That's partially there because I thought it would be really funny to have a sticker on something that said featuring over 45 minutes of crying. That's something that people have always wanted.
Yeah.
And
it's
so
great.
as a result, I had to record 45 minutes of crying. So sometimes, you do different things for different types of jokes. I mean, the album itself, I think it's fun to read through the titles and skip around and listen to different stuff. So I don't know. I don't know if somebody gives me flack or not, but I think it would be sort of pointless.
Yeah, it really would, because like I said, I'm in the camp that sometimes usually it is more creative and more difficult to come up with something that way than just writing. But I mean, go ahead.
It's sort of also either way. I'm not doing it because it is easier or more difficult. I'm sort of doing it because it's funny to me.
Oh yeah, it really,
hopefully to others.
And one of my favorite bits that you do that I don't even think you, I'm making an assumption, but that to me looks like it didn't start out as a bit, is you'll take full page ads out in various towns and write various letters about things that annoy you. And in Vegan, it's it's to Portsmouth for their parking, and then you have one, I think, to Time Warner. How did that all get started?
Yeah.
That as a bit for you.
I think that started with Time Warner was the first time I sort of took out an ad, and then the Portsmouth thing is the second. That started with me being really annoyed at Time Warner and them not caring, and sort of trying to figure out what's something that could make a company care. And to me, the answer was making fun of them in a large public way that could easily be spread using the internet. Mm-hmm. And it's true. Though I think that there's a lot of public shaming of individuals that is often not great or turns out to be wrong. There's a lot of public shaming of companies that I think actually is quite good and helps sort of correct a lot of companies' behavior to be much more, help good or just.
Yes.
I don't know how to phrase it.
I have to ask about the Portsmouth one. Did the ad after it ran in the summer when after you filmed the special, did it do anything? Did they finally get anything done?
No. Well, first of all, I paid the ticket a long time ago.
Right.
And a lot of people. It turns out that in Portsmouth, there's like a lot of parking is a hugely contested thing.
Yeah.
My main complaint also, which I don't know if people fully understood, was not that they have the law, that there's no way to know it in the specific place I was, meaning lots of cities have that law. It's not an uncommon law.
Yeah.
Most of them put up a sign telling you about the law.
Yeah.
So when I went back, there weren't any signs. Like I had been back.
Yeah.
So they hadn't put up the signs. Maybe they have now. I don't know. But I think it also struck a chord with a lot of people who are in that area who are upset at the parking regulation.
Yeah, I just had to ask because watching that last night, that was just so funny. We're going to switch gears. Bob's Burgers, which is my favorite cartoon, my favorite show on Fox, my favorite animated series ever. It was originally supposed to be about cannibals. How is that going to work?
In the very beginning, it wasn't really supposed to be about cannibals. I think when it was first pitched, it was about a family that lived in a place and then worked there and then were also cannibals. And I think Fox, just asked Lauren, like, hey, do you really want to write a show where every week it's about cannibals?
Yeah.
And he was like, oh, I guess I probably don't. Like, that idea is sort of funny, which is how the very first episode has to do with Louise trying to convince people that the food is made of people.
Yeah.
And is human flesh.
Yep.
But, so that was like in the very early stages. But we also developed it for, maybe 2 years or a year and a half or something, mm-hmm. where Lauren cast each of us. And originally, Tina was Dan, and then they had sort of decided to switch the gender, but keep Dan. And it works out wonderfully. Yeah. Really wonderfully.
It's really, and I remember this interview that I do research and I read different interviews. It was a couple of years ago, and you referred to the show when it first started as the little show that could, and now it's the big show that does. And are you surprised at how well it's taken off? I mean, what do you make of this astronomical success?
I think it's wonderful. I don't know if it's like astronomical. I think it's just like a show that is really well liked by people who enjoy it and watch it. Mm-hmm. It's wonderful.
It really is.
It's wonderful to be part of a thing that so many people enjoy, and also that we all enjoy and watch and also love working on. Because again, this show is, the people on it I've known for 15 years, maybe longer. Mm-hmm. So it's really just such a pleasure. And then even the guest stars are often either people that we admire or that we've known for a very long time and came up with in comedy. So it's just like an incredible thing to be part of something that's like so enjoyed and also such a joy to be a part of.
Yeah. I want you to talk a little bit about the process that goes into creating an episode. How much input do you have, if it's grown over the last 6 years, in Gene's character? I mean, it was written for you, but giving Gene lines and giving him circumstances.
Well, the writers write episodes, and they all sort of work on it, and then when we go in to record, we record together. So, it's really fun to try to think of jokes to swap in and out or to, kind of go off on tangents. Mm-hmm. And sometimes that stuff totally gets in. Sometimes, it goes off too much.
Yeah.
But the truth is, with recording, cartoon audio, you can record as much as you want. There's nothing to mess up because it's just, in the end, edited, and then they use the things they like the most and put it together and then animate it.
Mm-hmm.
So in that sense, it's really wonderful because, you can go wherever you want. You can try stuff. The writers are there also suggesting new lines. There's different takes. You try, a bunch of different directions, and in the end, they edit sort of the best of what they have.
That's really cool. Now I have to ask: is there a favorite Geneism, a favorite Gene one-liner in all the 6 years that stands out to you?
I don't know. It's funny. There's I don't know offhand. Meaning, I think there's the things that people quote that I hear. But, I don't know. The whole thing is sort of very fun. I don't know if I have a favorite thing, like me going, this is me now, or whatever.
Yeah.
I bet there is. I bet if I sat down and watched a bunch of it, there'd be something where I'm like, oh, that's kind of a favorite. I think that it's more Gene's enthusiasm for life that I adore.
Yeah. Yeah, and I can
positivity.
Yeah, do they accost you at live performances when you take questions? Do they make you go, "This is me now," or do they give you a line and you read it?
What do you mean? When we do table reads for Bob's Burgers?
No. If you're at a live show, will there invariably be that question of somebody wanting you to say their favorite Gene line?
Not really. Meaning, stand-up is a different thing, so rarely do people stop me in the middle of telling something and ask me to yell a thing at them.
Yeah.
But occasionally people will say, could you say this?
Yeah.
And then I sometimes will, unless what they're asking is really weird, or they have a bunch of complicated stuff they want me to do.
Right.
But yeah, it's, and sometimes when we do Bob's Burgers tours and have a Q&A,
mm-hmm.
That'll be a little different than sometimes people do have specific requests because all of the cast is there.
And how great is that to get out there with the cast and just get to go in front of those fans and see the people that have made the show?
It's really fun. We did a tour last year and it was really, really fun to go to these cities and then see people who just love the show.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well,
meet them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The reason I ask if anybody did that during a live performance is because, again, going back to Vegan, you take questions from the audience, and I'm watching as.
Oh, I did do that. Yeah, I do that in the special and also on the album. Yeah.
Yeah, that seems like a really interesting way to combat hecklers, just to let them ask the question, have their moment. And...
Oh yeah, but there aren't people rarely heckle at a TV taping or even an album. I guess they did a little. It's not really.
Yeah.
I mean, real heckling, you would have people often removed because mostly hecklers are people who are actually heckling, especially if they're intentionally at your show. They're often just people who are really, really drunk and sometimes just confused about where they are and what they're doing. And also they think they're helping. They definitely are excited to be part of the show. They often have not seen stand-up and don't understand that it isn't a person on stage yelling at them. But in general, with me asking questions, it's more a fun way to engage people rather than this will release the heckling tension.
Yeah. Yeah. I just love how you engage the audience in that special. So you don't You don't take questions on the road then? It's not, there was something specific to the special.
Well, I mean, sometimes it shows, sure, I do. Yeah. I mean, sorry, I'll ask, that's a thing I sometimes do. That's kind of fun.
It's great.
Yeah, I do, but it's not, but I don't know if the questions are ever will you say this thing? They're often a question. Will you say a thing isn't a question. It's someone asking me to do something.
Yeah.
So a question would often have a different type of answer.
Yeah. Yeah. So now, getting back to my questions, this would actually be something I would ask if I were at your live show. Is there one thing above all else that you consider yourself, because you've done it all in this unique career with acting, live acting, voiceover, stand-up. Is there one thing that you consider yourself more than the others?
I guess probably a stand-up or the comedian. I think people ask me what I do. I say I'm a comedian.
Mm-hmm.
I think I would say that before I said writer or voice actor or anything.
Yeah.
Because I guess comedian, I think, encompasses all the other stuff.
Yeah.
And then as a comedian, I also do acting, and as a comedian, I also do writing.
Yeah, well, it's led to this. If you had to define your career in a sentence, weird question, I know, but if you had to define the career in a sentence, what would you say? Just this journey.
I would say I'm a comedian who does a bunch of different stuff.
Yeah. And speaking of that, this is the last question. I love you. Thank you for your time. Last question here. For aspiring comedians that want to follow their own path but aren't necessarily sure how to, what would your advice be to up-and-coming entertainers?
I mean, I would say, one, to give it a long time, like 10 years, 15 years. And then I would say to try to think of something every day that you could do that would sort of forward things a little bit for yourself. And if not every day, every week or every month, I think it's more about look back, to 6 months ago and see, have you done a bunch that's moved you forward a little bit, and write as often as you can and perform as often as you can. If something doesn't work, try to fix it. And if you can't get it to work, get rid of it and write something else. There's very few people who can get on stage and make people laugh for 40 minutes to 60 minutes who don't become professional comedians.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
If that's a thing you can do, if you have 5-10 minutes of funny, quick comedy, you'll probably get on TV to perform it on a talk show because they're looking for comics to put on television, and a lot of places want to be the people who break a funny person. So you're working with an industry and not, against it or something. And I guess I'd say do comedy wherever you are, and then eventually move to New York or LA because that's where there is tons of work. People move to Boston or Silicon Valley to work in computers. People move to New York or LA to work in television and film.
Yes.
It's, in general, people move to where their industry is. So do comedy wherever you are for a while, get pretty good, and then move to one of those two places to do it professionally. And then once you're doing it professionally, feel free to move back.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Eugene Mirman. Everybody, check out the new album. I'm Sorry, You're Welcome. And check out the special on Netflix, Vegan on His Way to the Complaint Store. And, of course, check out Bob's Burgers on Fox. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you, sir. That was a ton of fun. I encourage everyone to check out all of Eugene's awesome projects and visit eugenemirman.com to see when his I'm Sorry, You're Welcome tour will be coming to you. That's it for us this week. In the meantime, head over to talk4spellout2.com for even more Talk for Two. Reach out by emailing talkfor2cast@gmail.com and find our group or like us on Facebook by searching for Talk for Two. Tweet us and about us using @ and hashtag Talk for Two. Very important, the website is the only one with the numeral. All the rest are FOR. Thank you again to our season sponsors, the Tangent Bound Network. They are our servers. And to our season entertainment sponsor, Axtel Expressions. We talked about both of them at the top, and I hope you'll go check out their sites. Signing off for Talk for Two, I'm Matt Bailey, reminding everyone out there to keep talking for two.
You can hear more show business interviews with the stars at talkfor2.com, where you'll also find one-of-a-kind products to improve your own show. That's talk, the number 4, TWO.com.